The blood wouldn't stop. I'd been a trauma nurse for 3 years at Chicago Memorial, and I'd seen every kind of wound the city could produce. Gunshots, stabbings, industrial accidents that turned men into jigsaw puzzles. But when they wheeled Roman Vitali through the O doors at 2:47 a.m., something in my chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with professional concern. He was conscious, which was remarkable considering the knife wound in his side. His eyes, dark, almost black in the fluorescent light, slocked onto mine as I cut away his blood-soaked shirt. "You're going to be fine," I said, the lie coming as easily. The blade had gone deep, possibly nicked his liver. "I know." His voice was steady, accent tracing the edges of his words. "Italian," I thought, "because you won't let me die." The confidence should have annoyed me. Instead, it steadied my hands. His security team filled the hallway, 6 men in dark suits, silent and watchful. No police report would be filed tonight. I knew what that meant. Everyone in Chicago knew the Vitali name, whispered it like a prayer or a curse depending on which side of the law you stood. I worked for 90 minutes. My fingers moving through muscle and tissue with the precision that had gotten me through nursing school on a scholarship. Dr. Chun handled the internal repair while I managed the bleeding. The sutures, the careful dance of keeping someone alive when their body wanted to surrender. When it was over, when Roman Vitali's vitals stabilized and his eyes finally closed in medicated sleep, I stripped off my gloves and found my hands shaking. "Good work, Martinez." Dr. Chun squeezed my shoulder. "He owes you his life." I nodded, too exhausted to speak. But as I turned to leave, one of the security men stepped into my path. "Mr. Vitali would like your name. Elena Martinez." I tried to move past him. "And he already has it on his chart. Your personal number." My heart kicked. "That's not appropriate." The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Vitali doesn't make requests lightly. Consider it professional courtesy. He'll want to thank you properly for saving his life." I should have said no. Should have walked away from the dark promise in that statement. Instead, I scribbled my number on a piece of paper, telling myself it was just gratitude, just a formality. 3 weeks later, I was wearing a sapphire the size of a walnut. Roman had sent flowers first, not roses, but rare orchids from some exclusive hothouse. Then came the texts, simple thank yous that evolved into conversations. He asked about my shifts, my childhood in Houston, my dreams beyond the hospital. No one had ever made me feel so seen, so essential to their world. Our first date was at a restaurant where there were no prices on the menu. Roman pulled out my chair, ordered in flawless Italian, and when his hand covered mine across the table, I felt the danger and the desire in equal measure. "I'm not a good man, Alina," he said, his thumb tracing circles on my wrist. "But I could be better with you. I should have heard the warning beneath the romance." Instead, I heard possibility. The proposal came at sunset on his penthouse terrace overlooking Lake Michigan. Roman knelt on the marble floor, his dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made breathing difficult. "Marry me." "Let me give you everything." I said yes because I believed in the man I'd saved, the one who looked at me like I was his salvation. Now, 3 weeks after that perfect moment, I sat across from him at Cielo Ristorante, celebrating our engagement with champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. Roman's hand rested on my thigh beneath the table, possessive and warm. His family surrounded us, his sister Lucia, his business associates, all of them welcoming me into a world I barely understood. To Elena, Roman raised his glass, his eyes never leaving my face. My future. My forever. The word hung in the air like a promise and a threat. That's when the restaurant doors opened and she walked in. Even from across the room, I could see she was stunning. Tall, elegant, wrapped in a red Valentino gown that accentuated curves and the unmistakable swell of her pregnant belly. Her eyes swept the room with calculated precision until they found Roman. His hand tightened on my thigh, painfully. The color drained from his face. The woman smiled, placed both hands protectively over her stomach, and walked toward our table. Every conversation in the restaurant died. In the sudden silence, her heels clicked against marble like a countdown. She stopped 3 feet from Roman, her smile never wavering. "Hello, Roman." Her accent was French, honeyed, and sharp. "Our baby's kicking. Don't you want to feel?" The champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering against the marble floor. No one moved to clean it. Every eye in the restaurant was fixed on the pregnant woman in red, and the man whose hand had turned to ice on my thigh. "Isabel." Roman's voice was flat, emotionless. The warmth that had been there moments ago had vanished completely. "What are you doing here? What do you think?" She placed a hand on the back of the empty chair beside me, her French manicure perfect against the dark wood. "I'm here to meet your fiancée. Alina, isn't it? I've heard so much about you. I found my voice, though it came out smaller than I intended." "Roman, who is this?" "No one important," he said, but his jaw was tight, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. Isabel laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "No one important? Roman, chérie, you wound me." She turned to me, her green eyes assessing. "I'm Isabel Moreau, Roman's wife." "Ex-wife," Roman corrected sharply, finally standing. His hand left my thigh, and I felt the absence like a loss of gravity. "We've been divorced for 2 years. You're supposed to be in Paris." "I was, but then I discovered I was pregnant with your child, and Paris seemed very far away." Her hand moved in slow circles over her belly, deliberate, maternal. 4 months now. "A boy, the doctors say." The restaurant spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table, my nursing training kicking in even as my heart fractured. 4 months pregnant. "Which meant conception happened around—" "That's impossible," Roman said, his voice deadly quiet. "I haven't seen you since the divorce." "Montreal." Isabel's smile was sharp. 4 months ago. You were there for business. I was visiting my cousin. We met at Le Serpent Rouge, had dinner, talked about old times." She paused, her eyes flickering to me. "And then we went back to your hotel. Room 412 at the Ritz-Carlton. You ordered a bottle of Chateau Margaux. 2015. Your favorite." I watched Roman's face, searching for the denial, the outrage, the immediate dismissal of her claims. Instead, I saw something that terrified me more: calculation. He was thinking, weighing his response, choosing his words. "You're delusional," he said finally. "This is harassment, Isabel. I'll have security remove you." "Please do," she smiled wider. "I'm sure the press outside would love to hear about the Vitali heir you're refusing to acknowledge. Or perhaps your business associates would be interested to know how you treat the mother of your child." Lucia, Roman's sister, stood abruptly. "Isabel, this isn't the place." "Where is the place, Lucia?" "Should I wait until after the wedding? Let Alina walk down the aisle believing she's marrying an honorable man." Isabel's voice rose, drawing even more attention. "Or should I tell her now about the scar on his left shoulder blade, the one from the knife fight in Naples, the one I used to trace with my fingers?" My blood turned to ice. I knew that scar. I had treated it 3 weeks ago in the had sutured the edges of torn skin, had felt the older scar tissue beneath my gloved hands. A previous injury, layered and complex. No one would know that detail unless they'd been intimate with Roman, unless they'd touched him in the dark. Traced the map of violence written on his skin. Roman's eyes met mine, and I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. "Elena," he said quietly, reaching for my hand. "Let me explain. Privately." But I pulled away, standing on legs that threatened to buckle. "Is she lying? About Montreal?" The pause was too long. Just 2 seconds. Maybe 3. But in that silence, I heard everything he wasn't saying. "It's not what you think," he said finally. Isabel gathered her Hermes clutch, preparing to leave. "He'll tell you I'm unstable, Alina, that I'm making this up because I can't let go. He'll show you evidence that contradicts my story." She leaned closer, her perfume expensive and cloying. "But before you believe him completely, ask yourself this. How did I know about the scar? How did I know about the wine? How did I know about room 412? She walked away, her heels clicking across marble, leaving behind a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Rawman's hand found my elbow. We're leaving. Now. I let him guide me through the restaurant, past the staring faces, past the security team that materialized like shadows. In the limousine, with the privacy screen up and Chicago's lights blurring past the windows, I turned to face the man I'd agreed to marry. Show me proof, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Show me where you were for months ago. All of it. Romans's hand tightened on his phone, his knuckles white. And that's when I knew Lila Moreau was telling the truth. Roman's penthouse felt different when we returned. The floor-to-ceiling windows that usually made me feel like I was floating above the city now seemed like walls of a very expensive prison. Sit, Roman said, gesturing to the leather sofa. Not a request. I remained standing. The proof, Roman. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. My calendar. 4 months ago, I was in Chicago the entire week. Meetings with the Giordano family about the shipping contracts. He turned the screen toward me. I studied the entries, appointments, conference calls, dinner meetings, all time-stamped, all in Chicago. Phone records, he continued, swiping to another app. Every call I made that week originated from Chicago cell towers. No international charges, no calls to or from Montreal. The evidence was convincing. Maybe Isabel was delusional. Maybe I need a drink, I said, moving toward the bar cart. Let me. Roman intercepted me, his hand gentle on my arm. You've had a shock. Sit, please. I'll make you something. This time I obeyed, sinking into the sofa while Roman poured scotch into crystal glasses. My mind raced, trying to reconcile Isabel's specific details with Roman's documented alibi. She knew about the scar, I said quietly. Roman's back stiffened, but he didn't turn around. We were married for 5 years, Elena. She knows many things about me. And the wine? The room number? Lucky guesses. Or information she gathered from my staff. He brought me the drink, sitting close enough that our knees touched. Isabel has never accepted our divorce. She's done this before, shown up at events, made scenes, tried to insinuate herself back into my life. I took a sip of scotch, feeling it burn down my throat. Why didn't you tell me you were married before? Something flickered in his eyes. Because it didn't matter. That part of my life was over before I met you. His hand found mine, warm and solid. You saved my life, Elena. You made me want to be better. Why would I poison that with ghosts from my past? It made sense, almost. I need to use the bathroom, I said, standing. Roman's laptop sat open on his desk in the corner, screen dark but not closed. While water ran in the bathroom, a trick I'd learned from too many crime shows, I moved quickly to his desk and touched the trackpad. The screen blazed to life, still logged into his cloud storage. My hands shook as I navigated to his photos folder. I told myself I was looking for proof of his innocence. Evidence that would contradict Isabel's claims and let me believe in the fairy tale again. Instead, I found the photograph. Roman and Isabel at an outdoor cafe, autumn leaves scattered across the cobblestones. Her hand rested on his arm, familiar and intimate. Both of them were smiling, not posed, but genuine, caught in a moment of shared laughter. The metadata stamp in the corner read, October 15th, 4 months ago, Montreal. My vision blurred. I heard the water still running in the bathroom, heard my own heartbeat loud in my ears. With trembling fingers, I took a photo of the screen with my phone, then closed the laptop carefully, making sure everything looked untouched. When I emerged from the bathroom, Roman was pouring himself a second drink. Feeling better? He asked. I held up my phone, showing him the photograph I'd just taken. Want to explain this? The glass stopped halfway to his lips. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, Roman Vitali, the man who controlled an empire, who negotiated with politicians and criminals with equal ease, looked completely lost. Then the mask slammed back into place. Where did you get that? His voice was ice. Your laptop. We're still logged in. I moved closer, needing to see his eyes. Montreal, Roman, October 15th. 4 months ago, exactly when Isabel said, "It's not what it looks like." Then what is it? He set down the glass with careful precision. She ambushed me. I was there for a meeting, not the one on my calendar, a private one that couldn't be documented. Isabel found out somehow, showed up at my hotel. We had coffee. One conversation. That's all. You're lying. The words came out stronger than I felt. Elena, the way you're standing, the way she's touching you, the way you're both smiling. My voice cracked. That's not an ambush. That's not one uncomfortable conversation. Roman's jaw tightened. What do you want me to say? The truth. For once, just tell me the truth. Before he could answer, the penthouse door opened. Lucia walked in without knocking, still in her dress from the restaurant. Eyes moved between us, reading the tension like a book. "I need to speak with Elena," she said. "Alone." "Lucia, this isn't now, Roman." Her voice carried an authority I hadn't heard before. "Unless you want me to tell her myself." Roman's face darkened. "Tell her what?" Lucia met his gaze without flinching. "About Natalia." The name hung in the air like a blade. Roman's expression shifted through a series of emotions too quick to read, finally settling on cold fury. "Get out, Lucia." "No." His sister turned to me. "Alina deserves to know what kind of man she's marrying. If you won't tell her, I will." I looked between them, my heart hammering. "Who is Natalia?" Lacher's eyes held sympathy and something darker, guilt, maybe, or regret. "His last mistake. The one before you." Lacher walked to the bar cart, poured herself a generous measure of vodka, and drank it in one swallow. Roman stood frozen near his desk, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Lucia, I'm warning you. Warn me all you want, Roman." She turned to me, her dark eyes reflecting something between pity and determination. Natalia Volkov was a ballet dancer, Russian, 23 years old, performing with the Chicago Symphony Ballet. Roman met her at a fundraiser 3 years ago while he was still married to Isabel. My stomach twisted. "An affair, an obsession," Lucia corrected. "He set her up in an apartment in the Gold Coast, showered her with jewelry, promised her the world, and then she got pregnant." The room tilted. I reached for the back of the sofa, needing something solid to hold on to. "That's enough," Roman said, his voice deadly quiet. But Lucia continued, speaking faster now, as if afraid she'd lose her courage. "Natalia wanted to keep the baby. She thought Roman would leave Isabel, marry her, make her the mother of his legitimate heir." She laughed bitterly. She was 23 and in love. She didn't understand how our family works. "What happened to her?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "Roman paid her $2 million. Lucia's voice was flat, clinical. "In exchange, she signed an NDA, left the country, and gave the baby up for adoption to a family within our organization. The child was never acknowledged publicly. Natalia was never seen again." I looked at Roman, waiting for the denial, the explanation that would make this somehow acceptable. Instead, he poured himself another drink. "You make it sound like I killed her," he said coldly. "Natalia is alive and well in St. Petersburg, dancing with the Mariinsky Ballet. She got what she wanted, money and freedom from the complications of my world." "She wanted you," Lucia shot back. "She wanted her child. She wanted a fantasy." Roman's eyes were black and hard. "I gave her reality and compensated her generously for it. I felt sick. You paid her to disappear. To give up your baby. I made a difficult decision that protected everyone involved." He moved toward me, but I stepped back. "The child went to a good family, people I trust, people who can provide stability and safety. Natalia received enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. And Isabel never knew, which spared her additional pain during an already difficult time." "How noble of you," I whispered. His jaw tightened. You're judging me by civilian standards, Elena. My world doesn't work that way. Every decision has consequences. Every choice affects dozens of lives. I did what was necessary. Necessary? The word tasted like poison. You erased your own child from existence because it was inconvenient. I protected that child from a life of danger. Roman's control finally cracked, his voice rising. Do you have any idea what it means to be a Vitali? The threats, the violence, the constant risk? That baby deserved a normal life, away from all of this. I gave him that gift. You gave yourself convenience, I said. And you took away Natalia's choice. Lucia set down her empty glass. There's more, Elena. The family Natalia's baby went to, they're not just some loving adoptive parents. They're one of Roman's shell operations. The adoption was arranged through an agency he controls. The implications crashed over me like a wave. You're trafficking children? I'm protecting assets, Roman corrected sharply. The children born into our world without official recognition are placed with families who understand the importance of secrecy and loyalty. It's been our practice for 3 generations. I stared at him. This man I'd saved. This man I'd agreed to marry. How many children, Roman? How many babies have you made disappear? He didn't answer, but something in his silence told me the number was higher than I wanted to know. I need to leave, I said, moving toward the door. Roman blocked my path, his tall frame suddenly intimidating in a way it had never been before. You're upset. I understand. But running won't change anything. Move, Elena. Listen to me. I said move. My voice came out steady, despite the trembling in my hands. For a long moment, we stood in standoff. Then Lucia spoke from behind me. Let her go, Roman. You've done enough damage tonight. Something shifted in his expression calculation, replacing anger. He stepped aside, but his hand caught my wrist as I passed. This conversation isn't over, he said quietly. You're mine, Elena. We made promises to each other. I pulled free of his grip. You made promises. I made a mistake. In the elevator, descending from the penthouse towards street level, I finally let myself shake. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Now do you believe me? Meet me tomorrow. Café Noir, 2 p.m. Come alone. I'll show you everything. Isabel, my finger hovered over the delete button. The smart choice, the safe choice, was to tell Roman about this message. To trust the man I'd said yes to, the man who'd promised me forever. But as the elevator doors opened onto the lobby, I typed a single word. Yes. I spent the night at my old apartment, the one I'd kept just in case, despite Roman's protest. The studio in Pilsen was a shoebox compared to his penthouse, but it was mine, paid for with my nursing salary, furnished with thrift store finds and practicality. I lay on my second-hand IKEA bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the man who'd knelt on marble and promised me forever with the one who'd erased his own child from existence like a clerical error. My phone had been silent since I left. Roman was giving me space, or more likely, strategizing his next move. Either option made my stomach turn. At 7 a.m., I texted the hospital requesting a personal day. Then I sat at my tiny kitchen table with coffee that tasted like cardboard and tried to think clearly. The smart thing was to walk away. Return the ring, pack the designer clothes he'd bought me, and go back to my life of double shifts and instant ramen. I'd survived before Roman Vitali. I could survive after, but another part of me, the part that had saved his life, that had seen vulnerability beneath his armor, wondered if I was being unfair. Maybe Natalia's story had another side. Maybe Roman had made impossible choices in an impossible world. Maybe I was making excuses for him, because I'd already imagined our wedding, our future, our life. My phone buzzed. Not Roman. An unknown number. Elena, this is Isabel. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but you deserve the truth. All of it. Meet me tomorrow. Café Noir at 2 p.m. Come alone. I have proof of everything. Montreal, Natalia, and things Roman never wanted you to know. You don't have to trust me. Just trust yourself. and I stared at the message for a long time. This was manipulation, obviously. Isabel was Romain's ex-wife, possibly unstable, definitely motivated to destroy our relationship. Meeting her alone was exactly what Roman would forbid, which was probably the point. But then I remembered Lucia's face when she'd told me about Natalia. The guilt there, the regret. Roman's sister had nothing to gain from exposing her brother's secrets. She'd done it anyway, out of conscience. What if Isabel was doing the same thing? One typed and deleted 3 responses before finally settling on one word. Where? Her reply came instantly. Café Noir, Lincoln Park. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone, Alina. If Roman security follows you, I'll disappear and you'll never know the full truth. I should tell Roman. That was the right thing to do, the loyal thing. We were supposed to be partners, supposed to trust each other. But he'd lied about Montreal. He'd hidden Natalia. He'd shown me carefully curated evidence while keeping the damning truth locked away. I'll be there, I typed. The next 24 hours crawled by. I ignored Roman's calls, responding only to his texts with variations of "I need time." He didn't push, which was somehow more unsettling than if he'd shown up at my door demanding answers. At 1:45 p.m., I took the L to Lincoln Park, watching over my shoulder for Roman's security team. The streets were crowded with tourists and students, providing cover. If I was being followed, I couldn't tell. Café Noir was a small French bistro tucked between a bookstore and a wine shop. Through the windows, I could see Isabel at a corner table, her profile elegant against the afternoon light. She wore a cream silk blouse that accentuated her pregnancy, her dark hair pulled back in a chignon. She looked up as I entered, and for a moment, I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, but of what she was about to reveal. Alina. She stood as I approached, awkward with her belly. Thank you for coming. I know this wasn't easy. I slid into the chair across from her, my heart hammering. You said you have proof. I do. She reached into her Hermes bag and withdrew a manila envelope, setting it on the table between us like a balm. Everything is in here. Medical records confirming the baby's paternity and the conception date. Bank records showing Roman's payments to the shell corporation that handles his adoptions. Photographs from Montreal that prove we were together. My hands trembled as I stared at the envelope. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? Isabel's green eyes held mine, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine concern. I want to save you from making my mistake, she said quietly. I was 26 when I married Roman. Beautiful, in love. Convinced I could change him. 5 years later, I was broken, medicated, and discarded. Her hand moved to her belly. This baby is my second chance. But you still have time to walk away before he destroys you. He loves me, I said. But the words sounded hollow even to my ears. He loved me too, in his way. She pushed the envelope closer. Open it, Alina, or spend the rest of your life wondering what you were too afraid to see. My fingers brushed the envelope's edge. Inside was everything, truth or manipulation, salvation or damnation. Once I opened it, there would be no going back to the fairy tale. I picked it up. The envelope felt heavier than it should. Just paper and ink, but weighted with the potential to shatter everything I'd built my future around. I glanced up at Isabel. If I open this, and it's all lies, then you walk away and marry him, she interrupted. But if it's the truth, you owe it to yourself to know. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The first document was a paternity test from a Montreal laboratory, DNA sample collected from Lila Moreau. Comparative sample. My eyes scanned down the page, looking for the result that would either condemn or vindicate Roman. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. Roman Vitali is the biological father. The date of sample collection, 3 weeks ago. Recent, definitive, impossible to dispute. I set it down carefully, my hands numb. Could claim you faked this. Keep reading. The second document was a bank statement from a Delaware LLC called Sanctuary Services, monthly wire transfers, each for $50,000. sent to various accounts across Eastern Europe and South America. Notations in the memo lines: placement fees, care services, confidentiality maintenance. At the bottom, a single line highlighted in yellow: Account Administrator, Roman Avitali. Natalia's adoption went through sanctuary services, Isabel said quietly. So did 4 others in the past 3 years. Roman doesn't just erase his own mistakes, he's built an entire system for it. My throat tightened. 5 children. 5 babies removed from their mothers, placed with families loyal to the Vitali organization. Their existences scrubbed from official records. There's more, Isabel said, though her voice had softened with something like sympathy. The third item wasn't a document, but photographs. The first showed Roman and Isabel at that outdoor cafe in Montreal, the one I'd seen on his laptop. But these were different angles, a series of shots that told a story, arriving together. Laughing over wine, his hand covering hers across the table. The final photo showed them entering a hotel together, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. The intimacy was unmistakable. We were together for 3 days, Isabel said. Not one coffee, not an ambush. He called me Elena, told me he needed to see me, that he'd made a mistake letting me go. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. The evidence was drowning me. Last one, she whispered, sliding a final page across the table. It was a letter, handwritten in Roman's precise script on hotel stationery, St. Regis, Montreal. Dated 4.5 months ago. Isabel, I can't apologize enough for how things ended between us. These past 2 years, I've told myself I made the right choice, that our divorce protected us both. But seeing you again reminded me of what we had before everything fell apart. I know I can't undo the damage. I know trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. But I want to try. When this business in Chicago is settled, when I have the space to think clearly, I want to make things right between us. You are my wife. That meant something. It still does. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. This wasn't a man resisting an ambush. This was a man reopening a door he'd claimed was closed forever. He wrote that 3 weeks before he proposed to you, Isabel said gently. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later. By then, he'd already moved on to his next project. You. I looked up at her, this woman I'd thought was my enemy. Why didn't you show him the pregnancy test? Make him face it. I tried. He blocked my number, returned my letters unopened, had his lawyers threaten me with restraining orders if I contacted him again. Her hand moved to her belly, protective. The only way to make him listen was to force a public confrontation, to make him acknowledge the truth in front of people who mattered. I stared at the documents spread across the table. Medical proof. Financial records. Photographs. A letter in his own handwriting. All of it painted a picture of a man who didn't just lie, he constructed elaborate, alternative realities and then inhabited them so completely that even he believed them. He told you he was a monster who could be saved by the right woman, Isabel said, echoing the exact words Roman had whispered to me on our 3rd date. He told me the same thing once. But Roman doesn't want to be saved, Elena. He wants to be enabled. And he's brilliant at finding women who will do exactly that. I opened my mouth to respond, to ask another question, to process this avalanche of truth. That's when the cafe door opened and 3 men in dark suits entered. Roman's security team. My blood turned to ice. You said to come alone. I didn't tell anyone, Isabel said quickly, her face paling. Elena, you have to believe me. The lead security man, Marco, I recognized him from the hospital, approached our table with purposeful strides. His hand was inside his jacket, resting on something I suspected was a weapon. Miss Martinez, he said, his voice professionally neutral. Mr. Vitali requests your immediate return. Now. Through the cafe window, I saw a black SUV pull up to the curb. And standing beside it, his expression unreadable in the afternoon sunlight, was Roman. He'd been tracking me. Following me. Watching. Isabel grabbed my hand across the table. Don't go back to him. Please. But Marcus's hand was already on my elbow, firm but not painful, guiding me to stand. "She's coming voluntarily," he said to Isabel. "Aren't you, Miss Martinez?" I looked down at the evidence scattered across the table, proof of everything Roman had hidden, everything he'd lied about. Then I looked through the window at the man I'd agreed to marry, whose child I'd imagined carrying, whose ring still sat in a drawer at my apartment because I hadn't been able to bring myself to return it yet. His dark eyes met mine across the distance. And I realized this was the moment that would define everything. Marco guided me to the SUV with a grip that was polite but unyielding. Through the cafe window, I saw Isabel gathering the documents from the table, her movements frantic. She knew what I was walking into. Roman opened the car door himself. Get in, not a request, an order. I climbed into the back seat, and he slid in beside me. The door closed with the finality of a vault ceiling. Marco got into the driver's seat, and the privacy screen rose smoothly, cutting us off from the outside world. For a long moment, Roman said nothing. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, hands resting on his knees with deliberate control. I could feel the fury radiating from him like heat. "You've been tracking my phone," I said, breaking the silence. "Of course I have." He turned to face me, and I saw the mask was already cracking. "Did you really think I'd let you wander around Chicago unprotected after everything that's happened?" "Protected? That's what you call this? You met with my unstable ex-wife against my explicit wishes." His voice was low, dangerous. "You put yourself at risk, undermined our relationship, and—" He stopped, his eyes dropping to my lap, where I still clutched one of Isabel's documents. "What did she give you?" I held up the paternity test. "The truth." "Something you seem allergic to." He snatched it from my hand, scanned it quickly, then tossed it aside like garbage. "A piece of paper proves nothing. These can be forged, manipulated. Like your calendar? Like your phone records?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo I'd taken of the letter. "How about this? Is your handwriting forged too?" Roman's face went carefully blank as he read his own words. When he looked up, the pretense was gone. No more charming suitor, no more wounded lover. Just cold calculation. "I'm not going to apologize for my past, Elena. I'm not asking you to apologize for your past. I'm asking you to stop lying about it." My voice shook but held. "Were you with Isabel in Montreal? Yes or no?" Yes. The admission should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the floor dropping out beneath me. "For 3 days," I continued. "Not a coffee. Not an ambush." His jaw tightened. "It was complicated." "Was it also complicated when you told me you'd never slept with her after the divorce? When you showed me fake evidence? When you made me doubt my own instincts?" I leaned closer, needing him to see me, really see me. "I saved your life, Roman. You were bleeding out on my table, and I put you back together. Doesn't that earn me at least honesty?" Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or recognition. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You want honesty?" He leaned back, his tone shifting to something almost clinical. "Fine, yes, I went to Montreal. Yes, I saw Isabel. We had dinner, talked about old times, and yes, we slept together. It was a moment of weakness, a mistake I immediately regretted. You wrote her a letter saying you wanted to make things right. I write a lot of things, Elena. Most of them are strategic." He straightened his cuffs, a dismissive gesture. Isabel was becoming a problem, threatening to cause issues with her father's organization. I thought if I offered her some hope, some possibility of reconciliation, it would keep her quiet until I could properly manage the situation. The coldness of it took my breath away. Manage the situation. Like you managed Natalia. Exactly like Natalia. He met my eyes without flinching. Both women made emotional decisions that would have complicated my position. I resolved those complications as efficiently as possible. Isabel is carrying your child. A situation that requires management. His voice was flat, businesslike. The child would be acknowledged, provided for financially. Isabel will sign appropriate agreements and raise it quietly in Europe. Our life continues as planned. I stared at him, this stranger wearing Roman's face. You're talking about your son like he's a contract negotiation, because that's what he is. He turned to face me fully, his eyes hard. This is my world, Elena. Every relationship is a negotiation. Every complication requires a solution. Every loose end must be tied up cleanly. And me? My throat tightened. Am I a complication too? A loose end? For the first time, uncertainty crossed his features. You're different. How? Because I'm not pregnant yet. Because I haven't become inconvenient. I shook my head, seeing clearly for the first time. I'm not different, Roman. I'm just the newest version of the same pattern. Isabel, Natalia, me. You collect women who think they can save you, and then you discard them when they stop believing the fantasy. That's not true, isn't it? I touched the spot where his ring should have been. What happens when I demand too much? When I question you too much? When I become more trouble than I'm worth? Roman grabbed my hand, his grip tight. You're mine, Elena. We made promises. I gave you everything. You gave me a beautiful cage. My voice rose, breaking. Designer clothes and jewelry and a penthouse view, all carefully designed to make me forget I have no freedom, no truth, no real partnership. Just obedience dressed up as love. His grip tightened. You're being dramatic. You're upset, not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time since you walked into my I pulled my hand away. I want out, Roman. I want my life back. His expression hardened into something that made my blood run cold. No, that's not your choice. Everything in my world is my choice. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You're either with me completely, no doubts, no questions, no meetings with bitter ex-wives, or you're against me. And you don't want to be against me, Elena. The threat hung between us, unspoken, but unmistakable. Is that what this is? My voice shook. You're threatening me now. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted. The color drained from his face. What? I asked. He didn't answer, already dialing. Marco, get us to Chicago Memorial. Now. The SUV lurched into motion. Roman, what happened? He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Isabel collapsed at the cafe after we left. They're saying early labor. Complications. Despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the threats, my nursing instincts kicked in. How far along is she? 28 weeks. His jaw tightened. Too early. Way too early. Chicago Memorial's was controlled chaos when we arrived. I knew the rhythm intimately, the urgent voices, the squeak of gurneys, the electric tension of lives hanging in balance. But experiencing it as a visitor rather than a nurse felt surreal. Marco had called ahead. A doctor I didn't recognize met us at the entrance, his face professionally neutral. Mr. Vitali, Miss Moreau is in labor and delivery, 4th floor. They're trying to stop the contractions, but it's not looking promising. Roman's expression gave nothing away. The baby? Viable at 28 weeks, but high risk. They're preparing for emergency C-section if necessary. I moved toward the elevator before Roman could respond. I'm going up. His hand caught my elbow. Elena, you don't have to. She's alone and terrified. I pulled free. Someone should be with her. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or calculation about what my presence in that room would mean. Fine, he said finally, but I'm coming with you. The labor and delivery floor was quieter, more controlled. A nurse I recognized from my rotations directed us to a private room at the end of the hall. Through the doorway I could see Isabel in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her and 4 in her arm. She looked small without her designer armor, vulnerable in the thin hospital gown. Her eyes were red from crying. When she saw Roman, she turned her face away. Get out, Isabel. Roman stepped into the room. I said, get out. Her voice cracked. You've done enough. I moved between them, my training taking over. Isabel, I'm Elena. I'm a nurse. Can I check your vitals? She stared at me, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. Why are you here? To watch me lose everything? I'm here because no one should go through this alone. I glanced at the monitors, noting her elevated heart rate, the irregular contractions still showing on the printout. "How's your pain?" "Manageable." She touched her belly, fear naked on her face. "They gave me something to stop the labor, but the doctor said it's not working." "My baby!" Her voice broke. I took her hand, the same instinct that made me good at my job overriding everything else. "Your baby is a fighter. 28 weeks. They have excellent survival rates now. The NICU here is one of the best in the country." "Because of stress," she whispered, her eyes finding Roman across the room. The doctor asked if I'd had any recent trauma, any emotional distress. A bitter laugh escaped. I didn't know where to start. Roman stood near the window, his back to us, hands in his pockets. He could have been looking at a spreadsheet for all the emotion he showed. "You should leave," I told him quietly. He turned, surprise flickering across his features. "Excuse me." "She doesn't want you here. Your presence is making things worse." I kept my voice level, professional. "Go." For a moment I thought he'd refuse. Roman Vitali wasn't accustomed to being dismissed, especially not by the woman wearing his ring or who had been, until recently, but something in my expression must have convinced him. He nodded once and left without a word. As soon as the door closed, Isabel's composure crumbled. "I'm going to lose him. I can feel it. This baby is all I have. And stop." I squeezed her hand. "You're not going to lose him, but you need to breathe. Stay calm. Stress makes everything worse." Over the next hour, I stayed with her. Held her hand through contractions, talked her through breathing exercises, called for the doctor when her pain intensified. It was almost like being back at work, except this patient was carrying the child of the man I'd almost married. The man who hadn't come back to check on either of them. When the contractions finally began to slow, when Isabel's exhaustion pulled her into restless sleep, I stepped into the hallway. Roman was there, leaning against the wall near the nurse's station, scrolling through his phone. "She's stable," I said. "For now." He pocketed his phone. "Good. Let's go." I stared at him. "That's it? Good? Your child is fighting for survival 30 feet away and you can't even what, Alina?" His voice was hard. "Fall apart? Show weakness? That's not who I am. It's your son, Roman. It's a complication that I'll handle appropriately when the time comes." He straightened, adjusting his cuffs. "Right now, I need to manage the Moreau family situation, deal with the fallout from tonight's drama, and figure out how to salvage our engagement announcement before the press turns this into a circus." The words were so cold, so calculated, that I physically recoiled. "Salvage our engagement?" I repeated slowly. "You think that's still happening?" His eyes narrowed. "We had an emotional day. We're tired, upset. But tomorrow, when you've had time to process, tomorrow I'll still know exactly who you are." I kept my voice steady, despite the trembling in my hands. A man who pays women to disappear, who erases his own children, who treats people like chess pieces to be moved or removed as needed. I treat people according to their value in my world. He stepped closer. "And you, Elena, have significant value. I'm willing to overlook today's betrayal, the meeting with Isabel, all of it. We can start fresh." "Overlook my betrayal?" The laugh that escaped was hollow. "That's generous." "I'm serious." His hand cupped my face, the gesture that used to make my heart race now making my skin crawl. "You're mine, Elena. We belong together. Everything else is just noise." I stepped back, breaking contact. "I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's." His expression hardened. "Then we have a problem. Because I don't accept rejection well." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." He moved closer, backing me against the wall. Not touching, but invading my space in a way that made my pulse spike with fear rather than desire. "You're either with me completely, no doubts, no questions, no divided loyalties, or you walk away now and we end this cleanly. But once you make that choice, Elena, there's no going back." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, grateful for the interruption. A text from Lucia, the baby. "Emergency C-section. They need Roman. Now." I held up the screen. "Your son is coming. Whether you're ready or not." For the first time since I'd known him, Roman Vitali looked completely unprepared for what happened next. The operating room was off limits, but I stayed with Isabel until they wheeled her through the double doors. She gripped my hand with desperate strength, mascara streaking her face, fear making her look younger than her years. "Stay," she whispered. "Please. I need someone here who actually cares." "I'll be right outside," I promised. The moment they let me in, I'm there. Roman stood at the end of the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, conducting business while his son was being surgically removed 30 feet away. When he caught my eye, he ended the call and approached. "How long?" "However long it takes." I kept my voice cold. "You should be here, Roman. Waiting. Being present. I am here, physically. But your mind is somewhere else." "Your heart is." I stopped. "Actually, I'm not sure you have one." He flinched, the first genuine reaction I'd seen from him all night. "That's unfair, is it? Your child is being born in an emergency situation, premature and high risk, and you're closing real estate deals in the hallway. Shipping contracts, actually." His jaw tightened. "Someone has to maintain normalcy. Someone has to keep the business running while everyone else falls apart. That's not strength, Roman. That's cowardice." Before he could respond, the OR doors opened. A doctor emerged, still in surgical scrubs, pulling down her mask. I recognized her Dr. Sarah Chun, one of the best neonatal surgeons in the city. "Mr. Vitali? The baby is out. 1 pound, 15 ounces. We're taking him to the NICU now for respiratory support." "And Isabel?" I asked when Roman said nothing. "Stable. She'll be in recovery for an hour, then move to a private room." Dr. Chun's eyes moved between us. "The baby is very small. The next 72 hours are critical. Can I see him?" The question came from me, not Roman. Family only in the NICU for the first few hours. She looked at Roman expectantly. "Elena can go," he said quietly. "I need to make some calls." Dr. Chun's expression flickered with judgment before she smoothed it away. "This way, Miss Martinez. Elena Martinez." I followed her down the hallway, leaving Roman standing alone in the corridor with his phone and his cold, careful control. The NICU was a maze of e-solettes and monitors, each tiny patient fighting their own battle. Dr. Chun led me to an incubator in the corner where a team of nurses was connecting leads and adjusting settings. Inside lay the smallest human I'd ever seen. He was translucent, his skin so thin I could see the network of veins beneath. A ventilator covered most of his face, and his tiny chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. His hands were smaller than my thumb, fingers like delicate twigs. "He's beautiful," I whispered. Though my nursing training saw all the risks, underdeveloped lungs, potential brain bleeds, feeding challenges, infection vulnerability. "He's a fighter," one of the NICU nurses said. "His stats are better than expected for 28 weeks. I stood there, watching this fragile life that Roman had tried to deny, that Isabel had fought so hard to protect. This baby who would grow up knowing his father saw him as a complication rather than a miracle. 20 minutes later, Isabel was wheeled past the NICU window on her way to recovery. Still groggy from anesthesia, she turned her head, searching. When she saw me standing by her son's isolette, tears streamed down her face. I gave her a thumbs up, mouthing "He's perfect." She nodded, then closed her eyes, exhausted and relieved. Roman never came to the NICU, never asked to see his son, never even inquired about the baby's name. I found him 2 hours later in the hospital cafeteria, drinking espresso and reviewing documents on his tablet. He looked up when I approached, his expression carefully neutral. "How is he?" "Small, scared, fighting." I sat down across from him. "Your son, Roman, in case you forgot." "I haven't forgotten anything." He set down his tablet. "I've been making arrangements. Financial provisions for his care, security for Isabel's recovery, legal documentation for—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop talking." He went silent, surprise flickering across his face. "I stayed with Isabel through her fear," I said quietly. I held her hand. "I stood by your son's isolette and watched him breathe. And you know what I realized?" "What?" "That you're not capable of love. Real love. The kind that makes you vulnerable and messy and human. I pulled off the engagement ring I'd been carrying in my pocket, the one I couldn't quite let go of until this moment. I set it on the table between us. You're capable of possession, control, strategic affection, but not love. Roman stared at the ring, then at me. You're making a mistake. No, I'm correcting one. I stood. Isabel was right. You don't want to be saved. You want to be enabled. And I won't do that anymore. Alina, goodbye, Roman. I walked away, my nursing clogs squeaking on the linoleum, and I didn't look back. Behind me I heard his chair scrape, heard his voice call my name once more. But I kept walking. Through the cafeteria, past the elevators, out the hospital's front entrance into the cool night air. I walked until my legs ached, until my tears dried, until Chicago's skyline blurred into lights and shadows. Somewhere behind me, Roman Vitali stood in a hospital cafeteria, holding a ring I'd returned and facing a future he couldn't control. And somewhere above me, in the NICU, his son fought for every breath, alone, but alive. 6 months later, I stood in the break room of Southside Community Clinic, stirring honey into my tea and listening to my coworker Maria complain about her teenage daughter's new boyfriend. He has a motorcycle, Alina. A motorcycle! She's 16! I smiled, the kind of genuine smile that had taken months to find again. Remember when we were 16? Didn't you date that guy with the Trans Am? That was different. I had good judgment. She paused. Okay, terrible judgment. But still, this was my life now. Simple conversations about ordinary problems. Double shifts at a clinic that served immigrants and uninsured families. A studio apartment in Pilsen with second-hand furniture and a kitchen the size of a closet. I'd never been happier. After leaving the hospital that night, I'd returned to my apartment, packed up the designer clothes Roman had bought me, and donated everything to a women's shelter. The jewelry went back to him via courier with a note. Give these to your next project. He'd tried to contact me. Calls, texts, flowers delivered to the hospital where I still worked per diem shifts. I'd blocked his number, refused the deliveries, and made it clear through Lucia who'd reached out with genuine concern that I wanted no contact. Eventually, the attempts stopped. Earth to Elena. Maria waved her hand in front of my face. You zoned out again. Still thinking about the professor? David, I smiled at the thought of him. Maybe. Girl, you've been maybe for 3 months. When are you making it official? We're having dinner tonight, actually. He's cooking. Maria's eyes widened. A man who cooks? Marry him. Immediately. I laughed, but the word marry sent only the faintest ripple through my chest. The panic that used to accompany thoughts of commitment had faded. David was kind, patient, honest. He taught American literature at Northwestern, wore glasses that slid down his nose when he got excited about Hemingway, and had never once tried to control, manipulate, or manage me. We were taking things slow. I needed slow after Roman's whirlwind. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucia. Thought you'd want to know. Isabel moved to Geneva last month. Baby is doing well. Thriving, actually. She named him Lucas. I typed back. Thank you for the update. I'm glad they're safe. There was a pause then. Roman's engaged. Congressman's daughter. Marriage is in 3 months. My stomach didn't clench. My heart didn't break. I simply thought, of course he is. Another woman. Another carefully constructed fairy tale. I wondered if she knew about Isabel, about Natalia, about the system he'd built to erase his inconvenient children. I wondered if she'd ask questions or simply accept the beautiful cage he offered. I hoped she'd ask questions. Good luck to her, I typed. I hope she's stronger than I was. Lucia's response came quickly. You were plenty strong, you walked away. Most don't. As I finished my shift, checking vitals and administering medications to patients who thanked me with genuine warmth, I thought about strength. For so long I'd believed strength meant enduring, accepting, loving someone despite their flaws. But real strength, I'd learned, was knowing when to walk away. when to choose yourself over the illusion of security, when to refuse the golden cage no matter how beautiful it looked from the outside. That evening, David showed up at my apartment with groceries and a shy smile. I'm attempting coq au vin. Fair warning, I've never made it before. I'll call for pizza backup, I said, kissing his cheek and feeling the simplicity of it, affection without agenda, comfort without conditions. While he cooked, narrating his process like a cooking show host and making me laugh, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My thumb hovered over it, some old instinct making my pulse quicken. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Can we talk? For a moment, I stared at those words. Words I might have waited months to hear, words that once would have sent me running back to his arms. Instead, I deleted the message, blocked the number, set down my phone. Everything okay? David called from the kitchen. Perfect, I said, and meant it. Through the window, Chicago's skyline glittered in the twilight. Somewhere in that sprawl of glass and steel, Roman Vitali was building another illusion with another woman. Isabel was raising Lucas in Geneva, probably still carrying the scars of loving a man incapable of putting anyone before himself. And I was here, in my tiny apartment, with a man who burned the wine sauce but made me laugh, who asked questions and listened to answers, who saw me as a partner rather than a possession. The promise Roman had made me forever had been beautiful and hollow. But the promise I'd made myself, standing in that hospital cafeteria 6 months ago, still held true, to never again confuse intensity for intimacy or possession for love. To choose myself, always, even when the cage was gilded and the captor was charming. That promise, unlike Roman's, was one worth keeping. David emerged from the kitchen, sheepish. So the coq au vin is definitely not coq au vin, but I made something edible. I stood, wrapping my arms around him, breathing in the smell of burned wine and honest effort. It's perfect, I said. And in the simple truth of that moment, no lies, no manipulation, no carefully constructed fantasy, it really was.